Hey YouTube family, how are you guys doing? Hope you're all doing well. Forgive the sportswear, but I just finished lugging down the stairs 3 412 Marshall cabinets and 3 different Marshall Plexi heads. A 68 Super Lead, a 68 Super Bass, and of course the modified Brown Sound head. My wife's going to be pissed, but she's at work and the kids are at school. So it's time to check out some gear. I'll show you the amps after this demo, but see if you can guess which one is which. Here's the first one. Oh yeah. Amp number 2. Amp number 3. You know me, I've never been a Gibson fan and I've never been a Marshall fan. But a Marshall and an LP together is like a match made in heaven, man. For the big power chord stuff, you just can't beat it. It's awesome. I know what you guys are thinking. How did you carry these down there? And how are you going to get them out before your wife gets home? Well, you know what? It was pretty easy to hide them. Check this out. There it is. There are my 3 amps and my 3 amp cabs. This universal audio pedal is absolutely killer. Yep, those 3 amps you just heard came from a West Creek Underdog LP into this pedal out to that headrush speaker. That's it. No computer interfaces, no software, no extra pedals, compressors, EQs, delays, reverbs, nothing. Man, this thing is crazy. Now, some of you are thinking, well, why do you have this pedal to begin with? Well, I was at my local Long and McQuaid, and I was talking with one of the guys who works there, who plays in a band, and I was telling him about my GP50, what I kind of set up and everything, and the guy was like, hey man, try this out. I'm like, what is it? It's Universal Audio's take on Marshall amps. It's called the Lion. And I'm like, I don't like Marshall amps. Why the heck would I want that? So he said, well, just try it. So he plugged it into the store, and we just ran through an FR speaker. I had a Tele at the time, and I was like, holy snap, this thing is freaking crazy good. So I'm like, how much are they? They're like $500 here, plus taxes. These are not cheap. But this one was a used item, and it was in the rental department. I just rented it. It cost me like $28 or $30 to rent it for a month. So almost less than $1 a day, just to horse around with it. And it blows my mind how authentic this thing sounds. Through an 8-inch speaker to boot. It's crazy. It doesn't make sense. It's a pretty neat pedal, man. So in case you're wondering, the first amp was the Brown Sound. The second amp was the Super Lead, and the third amp was the Super Bass. And it's pretty much how I had the knobs for all three. Now, as far as the speakers go, I'm not really sure what these letters mean. I didn't do any research on this whatsoever. Okay, like I'm not promoting this product. I'm not working for Universal Audio. I just thought it was freaking cool. So I'm just sharing it with you because some of you guys love the Marshall and Gibson thing. And man, why would you go buy a 150-pound unit to have collecting dust and replacing tubes, and you can get that kind of tone out of this? Holy smokes. And if you're afraid this breaks down, buy two of them. It's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper than buying a Brown Sound amp, a Super Lead, and a Super Bass, and 3 speaker cabinets. Anyway, this says GB25. I don't know exactly what that means. I think it's some kind of Celestion speaker. And then there's a GB30. I think that's a Celestion Vintage 30. And then there's a JB-GB. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm assuming the JB must be JBL, because I'm pretty sure Eddie Van Halen used like a Marshall cab with JBLs in it for his Brown Sound when he modded his Plexi. But, you know, I'm not really a hard rock player, so I'm not too sure about the history of that stuff. But super easy point and shoot pedal. Volume 1 is kind of more trebly and bitey. Volume 2 adds some bass to the mix. And apparently those old amps had like 2 gain circuits. So that's what that reproduces. The output, this is awesome. The output is like a built-in attenuator. So you can have full-on Marshall grunge and distortion at like bedroom levels. Or you can literally blow the roof off your house. This thing is awesome. And then in the middle you have amp, right? So if you have it on amp, then you select your amps. If you have it on alt, which is at the top, then these knobs, which is just bass, middle, and treble, and they work how you would expect them to work. These knobs switch to room, which is basically like a natural reverb. It creates the sound of the amp cab being in a room, a small room, big room, whatever. It's hard for me to explain, but I find it's something that I feel like as the player, but not so much the crowd would feel. Like it's not a reverb effect, you know? But you do notice the difference as you dial in the room knob. And then the presence. Obviously the presence knob works as any other presence knob. And the boost. So the boost will give you even more gain or more mid-range bite. So you can dial that in. And then if you like a particular sound, you go to store, hold the switch down, this button will flash, and you've stored that sound right here. So you can store one sound on the patch. So I could have that sound stored, and then I could dial in my pedal for something else, and then I could switch back and forth to whatever sound I want. And, of course, I could use other pedals into this, and I could shut the pedal off, play a little bit of country with my stuff, and then turn this pedal on and dial in some kind of wicked raunchy thing. Anyway, it's It's pretty freaking cool. I couldn't believe it. But it's not cheap, man. These are expensive pedals. Now they have different models. But as much as I like this one, it's not something I would buy because as much as people like Marshalls and Gibsons and blah, blah, like that combination, although it's great, don't get me wrong, it's a one-trick pony. Like, it's a one-trick pony. Like, it's not what you would call a versatile setup. So for me to have this, I could probably count on one hand, and I wouldn't even need all my fingers, how many times I would actually use these kinds of really aggressive Marshall tones. So, I don't know. I guess it's just up to you to decide if this is something you'd like. The old school tech I find is really cool because it was my era growing up, but it's, you know, it's had its day, and I'm just not into that stuff anymore. You know, I don't play the big gigs and the big venues and so that stuff just doesn't interest me. But this stuff, man, had I had this when I was a kid, maybe I'd be a heck of a lot better than I am today. But man, this is really cool. So yeah, I thought I'd share that with you. Before I sign off, I'll just plug a Tele in this really quick, just to show you what that sounds like. For the Tele, I'm just going to use the vintage 34x12 cab and the brown amp, and I'll just run a backing track. Just make it quick, and then we'll sign off.